is going on? No horsing around, family. Zach Boyd, Stephen Burton back at it again. And guys, we got a good one for you. Live stream. Going to talk about some draft scenarios. Going to probably end this thing with some head coaching possibilities. We got a big group together, man. I mean, it's going to be really, really cool. Got Derek Larger from Bring the Juice. Everybody knows him, as I always say when I introduce him. He's definitely voices larger than life. So you guys got to check him out if you haven't. We got Landon, my man, the draft guru, by the way. Blue Stable, we're going to have fun doing this one with Landon on here. Cody Felger as well from Bring the Juice. Love having them on there. We got Drake and Andrew from the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. They guys do a great job. They just did a top 5 candidate podcast yesterday. Go check that out. Don't be lame. Check them out. So we are going to go around the panel. We're going to start here in this premise with this scenario. We're gonna stay with picks 1 through 4. I've already pre-selected who's going to be picking at those positions. After that pick, we're gonna let Cody kind of put the crystal ball hat on and basically say, "Hey, man, I think this will be a really, really good pick. I don't like that for this team." But it's just going to be a quick back and forth, and then we'll kind of reflect and talk about that as we go. Stephen and I'll kind of wrap that up as we go in to the next segment. But draft order is going to be Andrew Moore at number 1. We're going to do Derek Larger at 2. Drake, you're going to have 3, and Landon's going to round it out at 4. Do not mess it up for the Indianapolis Colts, Landon. Do not mess it up. I repeat, do not mess it up.
Yeah, this is going to get interesting for sure.
It definitely is. So with the first pick, my man Andrew, Chicago staying put. They're resisting the trade bait. They gotta pick somebody. I mean, 2-point conversion, and now they get the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Thank God to Lovie Smith for that. Who you going with, man?
Listen, I've thought about this long and hard. I've received plenty of trade requests for Justin Fields, but I think we're going to roll with Justin Fields just a little bit longer here. So instead, as putting my Ryan Poles hat on, we're going to look at the defensive side of the ball. And none other than Jalen Carter at number 1, the defensive tackle out of Georgia, bringing him into a Matt Eberflus defense where a 3 technique is absolutely crucial. And Jalen Carter is arguably the best prospect in this entire draft. He's an instant starter, an instant playmaker for the Chicago Bears defense, and can be a cornerstone that they can really build around. So Jalen Carter, the number 1 pick in the 2023 NFL draft.
There you go. Jalen Carter. They went defensive line. Cody Felger, what say you? Like it? Hate it? Kind of meh? Where you at?
I mean, if you're not trading down, I mean, you're not picking a quarterback, a best player, non-quarterback player here, I think, in this draft. So 100%. I think this is the right pick here for number 1 for Chicago if they do stay at 1. I think he is out of the 2, defensive players here. I think he's the better one. And you're right, Andrew. You looked at Matt Eberflus in his time with Indianapolis and just, how crucial DeForest Buckner was in the first couple of years in that system and the success that they had with him in that 3 technique position. So definitely think it's a need for Chicago. I would say best defensive player for Chicago, and he clearly is. So love the pick for the kind of player you're getting here at number 1.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Derek Larger. Love to hear your perspective. You're number 2. Unfortunately, in this scenario, we did not trade up for the number 1 pick. So they are going to get probably the first quarterback if I'm reading the room right. But if you're the Houston Texans, new regime, you got a chance to take any quarterback in this NFL draft for your franchise and for the next 10 or 12 years. Who you taking, man?
You're right. Quarterback is definitely first case scenario for the Houston Texans. We've kind of been going back and forth. Everyone in Colts Nation been going back and forth. Who is going to get taken where? We've heard reports of, they actually like Will Levis more than CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, this. I think that the Texans, whoever they get a head coach and whoever's in that draft room working on this, I don't think is going to overthink this here. You're going to go with the guy who has been a Heisman finalist 2 times, has won it, went to the national championship game just a year ago, and a guy that is coming out of Alabama. I think they're going with Bryce Young here at number 2. I don't think they're going to overthink it. Bryce Young is going to get critiqued a lot, but I think they're going to go right there with Bryce Young, the QB out of Alabama here at number 2.
Derek Larger just broke my heart just now, but that probably is the right call. But Cody Felger, second pick. What are you thinking, man? What are you thinking with his thought process on that second pick, and where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum now just about Bryce Young, the kind of player that he is. Obviously, there's concerns about the height. There's concerns about the long-term durability of him and things like that. But, yeah, from a pure player standpoint, by far the best quarterback in this draft. And I think he has the potential right away to be the best, to be, probably, honestly, the rookie of the year. So I think for Houston here and what they're trying to do, you get Bryce Young, who can do a little bit of everything. He can run, he can throw, he can, he's just a human highlight reel, really. So, and the kind of leader that he is as well. So I think for Houston, this is one where they look at Bryce Young and they fall in love with him, and they're just like, this is our guy long term, for better or for worse. So I definitely see them going here. I think it's a good pick for them and the current state of their franchise right now, getting the best quarterback prospect on the board right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're going to shift it right over to Drake, man. Arizona Cardinals. Looks like Kyler Murray's probably not going to play much at all next year, if any. It's kind of a rebuild, and I don't know if you guys heard any of the reports from the Bleacher Report, but it looks like Frank Reich is starting to heat up down there in Arizona a little bit as far as a head coaching possibility. So that's more to come when it comes to that. But you have the third pick. You need everything. You probably have your franchise quarterback. That being said, Drake, you have the floor. Who are you picking with the third pick?
The thing is, we need a lot. You got to be honest with yourself. And as a franchise, our coach is gone. We started it off.
He's in Thailand, baby. He ain't coming back.
Yeah. And our best receiver starts off the season suspended. We kind of get off to a slow start. But a lot of things are needed, but I have to take Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State University at tackle.
Wow.
You have to protect the edge. You have to protect the backside. I mean, like Murray, we love him here. We really like him, but he did get hurt. He's going to be less mobile, down the road. So we got to protect him now, protect him with a new regime, whether that's Reich or whoever we do, put underneath the red dome here in Arizona.
Guys, did we just have a Wally bomb?
I'm in shock right now.
Have a Wally bomb.
I want to know why Paris Johnson over Peter Skoronski right now. Like, I'm genuinely curious.
Cody, let's get your initial thoughts on that. I mean, obviously, they need help everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they really do.
Wild card. Yeah.
That being said, just your initial thoughts. Paris Johnson, too high for you, a little bit too rich for your blood, or you like it?
I mean, I think it's bold, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I still, like you talked about, Arizona needs so much help, right? And Kyler Murray, for all the crap that he's been given, and I think rightfully so in a lot of instances. I mean, they at least have a solution at quarterback right now that could be your long-term solution. So I think pretty much any other position should be up for grabs. And so I kind of view it like, maybe how Ballard has in the past, where it's like, if you do go strictly off of need, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And so I would rather, go get the best player on the board, here. And I'd rather, do that than, and I understand the position. But you also look, Will Anderson sitting there, man, and that's tempting, especially with JJ Watt hanging it up. So that would probably be my pick here, but I understand the fact that if you're going to go all in on Kyler Murray this next year, you got to be able to protect him for sure.
Yeah, man. There you go. The third pick, Paris Johnson Jr. from the Ohio State University, going off the clock. And now the man of the hour, the fourth pick, he's actually picking for the horseshoe. Let's just recap real quick. We've got, what do we got on pick one? We went ahead and went with Jalen Carter. 2, Texans kind of paired themselves with their long-term solution, Bryce Young. Pick 3, Paris Johnson Jr. off the board. Sitting at 4, need a quarterback. We got our general manager Landon on here. Man, who you picking? And don't overthink this, Landon. Come on, seriously. It's a layup.
Okay. Well, I'm putting on my Chris Ballard hat here, and
Don't do that.
No, don't do that.
yeah, no, look,
Don't do that,
look,
man.
you want my opinion?
I want
Look,
the landing pick.
Chris, I'm just saying, Will Anderson's still on the board. Somebody's gonna have to hold Chris Ballard back. Will Anderson's still on the board there. But I have a feeling that if I don't go get a quarterback, I'm going to be on the first plane home. Like I'm getting booted out of the city, right? Yeah. So I'm looking at the roster, and I'm seeing Michael Pittman Jr. about to hit his second contract, Jonathan Taylor about to hit his second contract. You still have, young talent there at the wide receiver position with Alec Pierce. There's some young talent with Jelani Woods. It's not a bare cupboard there, but a lot of these guys, DeForest Buckner is almost 30. Darius Leonard's almost 30. Quentin Nelson's now getting on up there. He's 26 years old, going to be 27. So as much as I love the talent of some of these other guys, I don't have time to take a project. And I need somebody that can come in right away, utilize these weapons, and put us on the path to play winning football from day one. And when I look at some of the things that Chris Ballard looks for in quarterbacks, accuracy, number one, accuracy. Number two, mental aptitude, who is able to process quickly, who has the ability to get through their reads, make great decision-making. And then athleticism, or as Chris Ballard put it, just enough athleticism to where you can create. And there's one guy that checks all those boxes still here on the board, and Derek's like staring a hole into my soul right now. So I'm not going to disappoint him. I'm going to take C.J. Stroud from Ohio State.
There you go.
And he's going to come in day one. He's going to be the franchise quarterback this team needs. He's going to be able to, fantastic leader. First off, he's a guy I believe you've seen with that NIL money. He spent it on his offensive linemen. He spent it on his teammates. He didn't spend it on himself. He gave back to his family, to his team. And I think that's really cool stuff. And the guy's just extremely bright. Borderline. I believe photographic type of memory. His recall. Once he gets into those rooms here in the combine, and they're going through these play sheets, that guy's just gonna pop off the board when it comes to recall on some of these plays. And then you turn on the game tape, and there were questions about how he performs under pressure, questions about how he is able to basically create outside of the structure of an offense. And I'm not one to let one game cloud my judgment, but it's hard not to with that Georgia game. He showed everything you need out of a franchise quarterback, and he's probably one of the most accurate quarterbacks that I've seen come out of college since Joe Burrow. So that's going to be my pick. I'm going C.J. Stroud.
Okay.
Thank you, Landon.
You're welcome.
Felger, initial reaction to the fourth pick, C.J. Stroud, a Colt under this scenario.
Man, that would be nice. Be nice to finally have a guy that you think can be your long-term solution. Stroud's got everything you're looking for, guys. He's got the size. You talked about the photographic memory, extremely smart player. He's got the physical tools as well. And I think it resonated with a lot of people how he handled himself during that Georgia game and put them in position to win that game. So I think for Stroud, there's a lot of the biggest questions. I feel like he's sort of maybe not fully answered, but he's given an answer. And so I feel very confident taking him here. And I know there's that stigma, whether you think it's fair or not around Ohio State quarterbacks, but Stroud just feels a little bit different, guys, to me. From everything that you look at and I just have a hard time because how many other guys did people say, oh, they were throwing to these wide receivers or whatever, so I'm not going to take them, and they turn out to be really good players, like Joe Burrow, for example, look who he was throwing to his last year, and he worked out, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think, he is the most ready-made, like you talked about, landing quarterback, I think, outside of maybe Bryce Young. But I think he's got the advantage of he's the type of quarterback that is going to be, in the NFL for 10 to 15 years. Like, he's built that way. And he can also run, too. He's not a statue back there, right? He can run. It's not his first thing, but, he can do that. So, overall, I love this pick. I think this is the perfect pick here for the Colts. And, there's a lot less questions with a C.J. Stroud. To me, guys, it's, it's Young, it's Stroud, and then there's kind of a gap, and then there's everybody else. So CJ Stroud, the best, I think, second best quarterback in this class, but I think has a potential for the long term to be the best quarterback in this class. So love this pick. Love it. Shout out, Landon. Good job. Good pick. You didn't screw it up.
Oh, man.
Hey, there we go.
He did the Indianapolis. He did Colts Nation proud. Steven, interested in your thoughts. I know you've just been sitting there kind of taking all of this in. Just all 4 picks, just some thoughts that kind of, entered your head as these picks were kind of coming down and everything was evolving. What do you think, man?
Well, it's funny. So obviously the Cardinals one kind of stood out to me with Anderson still on the board. And I think everyone's kind of felt he's going in that range anyway. He's probably, a lot of people are going to go back and forth between him and Carter, right? So that one stood out to me. And then I'm not going to lie, like I was sitting here and I'm listening to them go, and I know we're going to talk later about it, but with the Texans and what we're kind of going through, and I know you're like, you broke my heart because Bryce Young, I think we can all kind of say too, like there's a really strong potential that their possible head coach has a very strong tie to where he's at. So he would easily be able to make one phone call and know everything he needs to know about Bryce Young outside of what we know. All the nitty-gritty details. All he's got to do is pick up the phone and call Nick Saban. So that's one that stood out for me. I said on a live stream with the vast majority of you guys like a week ago, and we talked about it. And CJ Stroud, I think Landon said it best. Like, you don't want to be clouded. And me and you, Zach, have talked about this too, by one game. But man, it was everything that you felt you needed to see, and you saw it. And then, for those who haven't checked out, make sure go follow Landon too. He's done great threads on Twitter with the different quarterbacks, and he's pointed out CJ Stroud really does match up with everything Ballard likes, and we know Ballard loves him some Big Ten and really loves him some Ohio State. So I'm not sucking up to Derek. Derek's been pounding his chest to us for CJ Stroud since, dude, I think the Notre Dame game. It's
been that way for a long time, buddy.
I have literally said, Derek, not to go down a rabbit hole, and I'm just gonna say this. I've literally given the example that we got off an episode with you, and you immediately pulled up on your other desktop a video of Stroud scrambling and showed it to us. It was immediate.
I just had to remind you, man. I just had to remind people that the narrative that he can't run is total crap. I just had to remind him.
Yeah.
Well,
overall, I like him.
Real quick. So I was talking to somebody that actually went to a few Ohio State practices a few weeks ago, and they were actually telling me that what you saw in that Georgia game is actually pretty normal to what you actually see in practice. It's just not what they game plan around. So it seems like he has that ability, and he shows it in practice quite often. It's just whenever you're that good in the pocket and whenever you can carve up people that well within the pocket, you generally don't even need to showcase it. So I think it's more of a thing of he just doesn't need to showcase it. Whereas in Georgia, he needed that because the pressure rate on him was insane in that game. So he kind of pulled it, out of his bag of tricks and let everybody know. But apparently that's actually a pretty normal thing from him. And just to kind of deep dive a little bit further, and I don't want to take up any more time, but whenever I'm looking at these quarterbacks and I'm looking at guys like Will Levis, guys like Anthony Richardson, and I know if you followed my Anthony Richardson thread, it shocked a lot of people when I said this isn't for the Colts either. This is just in general. He would be the guy that I would take a shot on if I was a team. That would be my quarterback. But when I'm looking at how the Colts roster is built, you don't generally have 3 to 4 years to wait on these guys to develop like Richardson and Levis, because at that point you're getting into Michael Pittman's approaching 30. DeForest Buckner's past 30. Darius Leonard's past 30. They're on the downswing of their careers, and this guy's just now starting to hit. And that's kind of what I wanted to avoid with this pick, where I think CJ Stroud can come in day one, give you that franchise level type of player, and you can ride the next 2, 3, 4 years on that rookie deal with a guy that's productive while you're not having to wait on some of these other project type quarterbacks to develop.
Yeah, you all make really, really good points. I'm kind of give some initial thoughts, and then we'll go into our next segment. I think under the scenario, under the premise that we're not trading, we had to pick it 4. It's probably best case scenario in my mind as an Indianapolis Colts fan. When you look at one thing with C.J. Stroud that is undeniable when you watch his film, he throws with anticipation. And that's what you have to do in the NFL. Listen to a lot of scouting in this offseason. College, you throw to an open receiver. In the NFL, you throw to open windows, right? It's not even there yet when you start throwing that football out. And you just have to trust your team, your technique, and your concepts. The guys are going to get open. And functional legs. I think he has functional legs. Now, is he going to be a guy who wants to run first? Absolutely not. But we all saw in Georgia, his legs looked pretty damn functional in that football game. When it came down to it, plays broke down. You got to love just his story and everything as well. You'd have to think he'd be in the mix there at 4. So, guys, you did a great job there. We're going to try to trade it up. And these are going to be – we're going to go around the table. We're going to start with Cody on this one, actually. You have 3 choices, okay? You can stay at 4 and pick whoever you want. I don't care. You stay at 4 and pick whoever you want, or you can trade up to 1 or trade up to 3. Just let us know if you want to trade up and who you would select if you did that trade up. I think most people here are going to probably want to trade up to 1 if they're being honest. But, hey, you have the floor and you can explain your thought process when it comes to that. So you're sitting right here at 4 right now, Cody. Are you going to stay pat? You're going to find a trade partner? And if you do, who's going to be the guy you select?
Yeah, no question for me. I'm finding a trade partner with the Chicago Bears. Familiarity obviously with Matt Eberflus and those guys, and I'm not taking the risk that CJ Stroud and another team, because I feel like if the Colts don't do it, another team will trade up and go get CJ Stroud or whoever. So for that, I think you got to trade up here with Chicago, and I select CJ Stroud at number 1. And I think twice about what I give up for him. So
okay, hey, that's not too shabby. You could do a lot worse than CJ Stroud. Let's toss it over to Andrew. Staying pat at 4, trading to 3, trading to 1, and who will you select?
I don't think if you're the Colts, I don't think you can gamble trading just up to 3. And I think Chris Ballard has said this over and over again that if there's a guy that the Colts believe is going to change this franchise and make it for the better, there's no question he's going to go up and get that. So if there is going to be a trade up, it's going to be up to 1 because not only the familiarity with Matt Eberflus, as Cody mentioned, but Chris Ballard and Ryan Poles, the GM for the Bears, they have familiarity working together in Kansas City. Now, some of these requests that these trade propositions that we've seen on Twitter over the past month or so, saying how the Colts will give up Quentin Nelson, DeForest Buckner, Shaq Leonard, and the statue out in front of Lucas Oil Stadium for the number 1 pick. That's not going to happen. I don't expect it to be something as grand as that. But if you're Chris Ballard and Ed Dodds and you're going through the situation, you absolutely fall in love with a quarterback. Let's say CJ Stroud is the guy. You're going to do whatever it takes to go up there and grab that guy. And I think when we're sitting here on draft night, I think the Colts will be picking first. I don't think a trade will happen that day. If there is going to be a trade, it'll happen days in advance to that. That's when the Colts will decide, hey, this guy's going to be our future, and go up and grab him. So, yeah, I definitely think it's in play. I think if I was in the position and I fell in love with a quarterback, absolutely, I'd go up there, trade for 1, and you take your guy and you build around him.
Okay, well, who is that guy? Who's your guy at number 1?
See, it's January, man. I'm still going through the film myself, like Landon is over there. As of right now, I would say it's CJ Stroud for me as well. I would probably we'll do a quick top 4, I guess. I'll go. Mine would be Stroud, Young, Levis, Richardson at this point. And I think that's probably what the Colts would probably be thinking as well. Or I would say probably the Colts would have Levis at 2 or maybe even 1. We'll have to see because Ballard and those traits. But for where the Colts are now, and the points have been made how this team they're not bare. This team has talent in crucial positions. I mean, you have at least 3 all pros throughout this roster, and they're not getting any younger. So you're going to want to take a guy that can come in and hopefully elevate this offense. You pair him with a offensive staff or an offensive head coach, and you run with it. And I think that's what the Colts are going to do. I don't think, even though Richardson could be the diamond in the rough, Landon brings up that great point. The Colts can't wait 2 to 3 years for him to be a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. They need a guy that can step in from day one or middle of the first season and be ready to lead this team moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think all great points there, Andrew. Let's pass it over to Drake. So you're on the clock at 4. You can trade up. You can stay put. You can stay put and pick Paris Johnson Jr. if you'd like to at 4, or you can trade up for a quarterback. We'll let you be the general manager here. What say you, Drake?
Well, it's if you sit, it really both scenarios. It's like I was on a Twitter space not long ago. I think Landon was on it too, where a guy said something interesting. He's like, "Look, you can't trade away anything right now. You have to let someone fall into your lap." Now, here's the thing: is I absolutely love Anthony Richardson. I absolutely love everything he brings, but realistically, the Colts probably need to trade with the Bears. In fact, I would trade with the Bears. I would, I think if I'm talking about if you have to trade a player, I can't give up Buckner. You can't give up Nelson. You can give up Moore. You can give up Kenny Moore, potentially. That might fit Eberflus's offense pretty well in the secondary, but you got to get up to number 1. You got to get, in my opinion, CJ Stroud. You can't just wait and hope that, Will Levis or, that's about the only guy I think that would fall into your lap outside of Richardson at 4. I really think that there's going to be some aggressive teams that are going to go call that quarterback as much as possible. So I think you trade with the Bears. I think that you go up to number 1, you pick CJ Stroud, and then you probably start trying to get some competition in for Raymond, some competition in for Fries. First thing you got to do is address that offensive line, because even though he can move, he might not be fast enough to, withstand what Matt Ryan had to, withstand it all. So definitely going to go get CJ Stroud from the Colts, realistically.
There you go, man. I love it. Heavy CJ Stroud so far in this trade-up scenario. I don't know why I'm asking Derek Larger what he would do, but it's only fair. It's only right. You're sitting at 4. We know you're trading up to 1, and we know who you're selecting. So who are you trading up and who are you selecting at number 1?
Well, I mean, for all the same arguments that Andrew made earlier, I mean, he said it exactly how I would want to say it. I mean, you can't sit back on this. And I saw Nate say like, oh, but some of the best quarterbacks have been found later in the draft. Yeah, but very rarely do those come up. You see 1 or 2 of those guys come up every few years, but you'd be lucky if you do that. And then on top of it, this year's class is already considered weak as in comparison to others. Like, you're taking a massive risk waiting. And when it comes to this, I mean, look, the thing is, I look at some of the other teams, right? Seattle has 2 picks in the first round. The Lions have 2 picks in the first round. Neither one of those teams truly needs a quarterback, but does Seattle want to pay Geno Smith this upcoming contract, or do they just want to go young, save that money, and go heavy in free agency? The Lions, I mean, I know they said that Jared Goff is a great player, but since Ben Johnson is staying, does Ben Johnson think, hey, if you get me like a Stroud or a Levis that I can go even more vertical with, then or a guy that has a little bit more athleticism, then maybe we could see that. The Panthers, I know for a fact, will be looking to trade up to go. And then the Falcons probably will too. So there's 4 teams I just told you right there that could potentially be jumping you at 3 or at 1. And you can't play that waiting game. You can't afford to do that. You're going to fall behind. And like Drake said, you're going to fall behind and you're going to either get Will Levis if you're lucky or Anthony Richardson. And unfortunately, if you get Anthony Richardson, as much as I know Landon and Drake and a bunch of other guys maybe in this room and others really love Anthony Richardson, he's not going to do well for you to start the year. You're probably going to be the worst off of any of the quarterbacks right from the gate with Anthony Richardson because he's the most raw. So, you have to jump that. And like Andrew said, the familiarity with Chicago, it's perfect The organizations feed off each other. Matt Eberflus is probably going to steal Bobby Okereke from us in free agency anyway, because we're probably not going to pay Bobby because he's going to want 10 plus million and we can't afford to pay him that. And then, you can always give him another player because Matt Eberflus, he's always willing to take a defensive player of ours, whoever that might be. But at the end of the day, like you said, whatever you got to do, you got to go and get the guy. And like you said, I don't got to tell nobody who I'm picking. Y'all know who the hell I'm picking at number 1. So I'll just leave it at that.
There you go. Give Derek Largest CJ Stroud at number 1 with the trade. Landon, where you at, man? I know that you landed on 4 last time. You did a great job. This time you have an opportunity to trade up if you'd like. And select whoever you would want in this draft. In this scenario, Bryce Young is still on the board. If you do, what say you at 1?
All right. So this is where, there's so much nuance involved in this, because my first question would be, who's the head coach? Because that's really going to depend on whether I want to trade up or not. If we hire a certain somebody that we won't name here right now to be our head coach, I would not feel comfortable giving up next year's first round pick because it's likely falling in the top 5. Now, if we go and get a guy, maybe, Shane Steichen, Brian Callahan, Raheem Morris, one of those guys, there's a lot better of a chance that I'm willing to trade up, because I think there's a chance that we win at least a decent amount of games and not, give up a massive, massive haul next year for that pick. So, I'm under the assumption we're not hiring that guy. So
hey,
yes,
no horsing around's not even doing podcasts on Saturday if we hire him. We're literally just blackballing Saturday.
Well, I was gonna say you said his name, so yes. So if the Colts do hire Jeff Saturday, I am not comfortable giving up a first round pick next year, and I would be willing to stay at 4 and get a guy like Will Levis or whoever, because it's going to be an uphill battle for any of these guys to win football games next year with him as head coach. And then you're looking up giving up possibly a top 5 pick that could become either, especially if it's in the first 2 picks, you're looking at Caleb Williams, Drake May. These are like, Caleb Williams is along that lines of like a generational type quarterback. And, Marvin Harrison Jr. possibly, we could lose out on that guy to pair with CJ Stroud. So it's tough for me to get behind that. So it's really all dependent on who the coach is. So let's say they hire Brian Callahan, works with Joe Burrow. Obviously we saw the job he did in Cincinnati this last weekend. Yeah. I feel a lot more comfortable trading up and going and getting a guy like CJ Stroud. And I would feel comfortable with giving up next year's first with that. So that's kind of my answer. Like I said, it's a little bit more nuanced to it because that's, kind of how I operate. But it's, I would trade up and go get your guy. If you believe that one of these guys is your franchise quarterback, you got to go get him.
Absolutely. Stephen Burton, I know you've been over there chomping at the bit. Where you at, man? You going to stay at 4? You going to trade up? Do us proud here on the show, man.
So, I'm going to say one thing, and I'm going to follow up with a different, okay? So I'm going to say I got no problem trading up. If you identify your guy and who that is, me and you both, we've been massive proponents. Sometimes, you just have to take a big swing. And at this point you do. But I'm going to follow this up. I'm going to play devil's advocate on the other side too. Is that because we've got a lot of comments that are saying, why are you giving up? What are you giving up? Like, what does the trade look like, obviously, to move up 3 spots? I can see that perspective too. I can see people being hesitant. Why would you move up for 3 spots on who you think? And it depends on who you're going after, right? And I think Landon put it really well is, who is the coach? Like, what are you looking at? What quarterback? And then also, like, the overarching, man, we don't know. Like, we love CJ Stroud. Me and you, Zach, we've talked about Bryce Young. Ballard could like Will Levis, and he's the one who's likely to drop. And we can all say, like, we'd be really excited for them to trade up. What if they traded up and took Levis 1? Like, people are going to flip out. So, I can see, I think Landon said it really well. There's a lot of nuances with it. I can see both sides of the argument on going and getting your guy, identify him and go get him. But I can also see the idea of people looking at it and being like, man, it's 3 spots. What are you giving up? And who are you identifying as your guy, right? Like, who is that guy? No one in here is going to say, if they identify it's Anthony Richardson, that they're going to trade up to 1 to get him, right? The same with Will Levis. Like, we all think that those 2 are the ones that are going to drop. But if it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, we're going to say, go get them. It's just we don't know. So, I mean, I can see both sides of it. Me personally, just do what you need to do at this point. Like, Ballard always says, you're going to run me out of the building. Dude, if you don't do it, they're going to run you out of the building at this point.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good points. I'll kind of finish with my long-winded statement as far as this goes. I've said all along, and this is Chris Ballard's words, not mine, but he said, if I identify the guy and I find the guy, absolutely, we're willing to take a big swing and we're willing to trade up. So if you sit at 4 and you don't trade up, is that saying to your fan base that I didn't find that guy? I mean, that's your words. You just said, if I found the guy that could change our franchise, I'm willing to trade up. Are you saying that? Or is it just a matter of, you like a couple guys and they're so close that you feel like one of them is going to be there at 4? I think you got to trade up to 1, and I don't really care who you take. It just says, to me, it says that there was that guy in the draft that you were just not willing to lose in the draft. I mean, you're just not willing to compromise and take a chance. And on top of that, you're able to jump a division opponent who's they are going to get the number 1 pick as far as a quarterback goes in this draft if you don't do that. And for that reason, I would trade to 4. I would go to 1. I'm probably a little bit different than everybody in this room, and I'm going to go Bryce Young. I beat that horn for a long time. I'm not mad at all. If CJ Stroud's our quarterback when it's all said and done, you'll hear not one complaint come out of my mouth about it. I just think Bryce is better. I think Bryce, I know we're going to hear about his build, and it's real, and it's there, and there's no way you can run away from that. But he's the one guy, when you go look at him and you dive into him, I don't question his ability on the football field. I question his size and his stature more than that. The other guys, you maybe poke holes and, there's this narrative that Stroud's not so great underneath pressure. I don't know if any quarterback's really good under pressure when it comes down to it, but he's not great when it comes to that. Doesn't have the greatest arm strength. And I just feel like that Bryce is more special than anybody in this draft, and that's who I would go up and get. However, doesn't seem like a Chris Ballard guy, if I'm being honest. We all know he has, height, weight, build that he goes by, and he just really doesn't like to deviate off of that. Stroud and Levis feel a whole lot more like what Chris Ballard would do in this scenario, if I'm being honest. And I wouldn't be shocked if we do trade up to 1 and we do select CJ Stroud. Not even for a second surprise me when it comes down to it. But if it's me, I'm trading up, and it is me. So I am trading up, and I'm picking Bryce Young, and I'm not going to apologize about it. And then hopefully 5-6 years down the road, we're hoisting that Lombardi trophy again here in Indy. So, question for every one of you guys, and we'll just do raise of hands. Confidence level on the fact that Chris Ballard would actually trade up from 4 to 1. He's no confidence.
I just think there's so many different factors that need to be straightened out first. I mean, like Landon said, who is the head coach? These we hear about every February how Chris Ballard and scouting department sits in the draft room 14-hour days for 25 consecutive days as they pore over the film and debate and fight over these prospects. And then you talk about how are they going to perform in the Senior Bowl? How are they going to perform at the Combine, the Pro Days, and then those top 30 visits, those meetings. And when you have Chris Ballard, Ed Dodds in the same room with that prospect, you bring Brian Decker in there to get a gauge of what really makes this player tick. All of those things combined is what's going to separate these quarterbacks from one another. Because I think what Colts fans need to really think about and really not be shocked about is that if the Colts do trade up to number 1, it very well could be for Will Levis, because the NFL is very high on Will Levis. Scouts teams are a lot higher on Will Levis than a lot of people on Twitter, fans, media are on, and then the NFL is. So I wouldn't be surprised one bit is if the Colts trade up to 1 and end up taking Will Levis. He was in that pro style offense. He's going to blow them away in the meetings rooms because of his experience there. So it's hard to say the confidence the Colts will trade up because so many things still have to happen that will have an impact on whether the Colts think, okay, this is our guy, we can't let him pass us by. If the Colts don't move up, then as Zach was saying, if the Colts don't move up, then you kind of know that the Colts, there isn't one guy in this draft class that the Colts are head over heels for and think that they are the answer to absolutely change this franchise.
Yeah, man, a lot of great points that we made there. We're going to round this out with a little bit of head coach talk, a little bit of news that Dan Quinn's coming in. We've got a Vero coming in. There's some conflicting reports about that guy that we just talked about earlier, potentially getting a second round, an in-person interview, which would have been really weird if they'd have done a virtual interview with him on his first round, being that he lives in Indianapolis. But whatever, that's a whole nother discussion. Cody, let's start with you. Head coaching candidates. If you could pick 2 guys and you say, hey, I want these 2 guys on my short list, I want to see them in the building, and I want to take a serious look at bringing a couple of these guys in. Any couple names that kind of ring a bell for you? And we'll just go around the table as we go through this.
Cody, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry.
You look great, though, brother.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. No, as far as my top 2 go, I would say for me, number 2 is DeMeco Ryans. And, typically I would say I would prefer an offensive guy with a rookie, just to kind of pair those 2 together. But I just think for me, DeMeco Ryans is just that good of a coach where, he needs to be, one of your top candidates. And I think he can definitely bring in a really good offensive mind to really help him out and really work with that rookie quarterback. So he's my number 2. And the number 1, I think, has to be Brian Callahan, Bengals OC, with what he was able to do, being in the room with Peyton Manning, being in the room with guys like Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, and then really being critical in Joe Burrow's development. I mean, that to me is just like, that's the perfect scenario here. Because we made a comparison earlier on the stream about, some similarities in terms of Stroud and Burrow. So like, I know it's not a perfect comparison at all. But Stroud has a lot of those traits that you really think franchise quarterback can have, just like Burrow did. And so I just really would love to pair him alongside with a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young or somebody like that. Really, I guess, yeah, to me, you have to get the coaching right before you get the quarterback right. Obviously, the quarterback's important, but, if you can get a coach that can develop some of those traits, whether it's a CJ Stroud or a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson, to me, that's more important. So in this instance, Brian Callahan's my number 1. I think by a long shot, honestly.
Okay. I mean, very, very viable candidates. Let's kick it over to Landon. You got a couple of names, man, that you just got to eye out. And you're like, man, I really would be intrigued by having a bigger conversation and getting them in that building on West 56th.
Yeah, well, Cody had one of my guys there, and that is Brian Callahan. And the points he brought up, especially with pairing with a young quarterback and, a lot of the offensive designs there in Cincinnati, the way that they attack defenses, and especially with the way these defenses now have converted, more to this too high looks, and, they're rotating a lot of these coverages, and Cincinnati attacks those better than almost any team in football. And I know Zach Taylor does a lot of work there. He calls the plays, but it's very similar to, what the Colts were with Frank Wright and Nick Sirianni. I mean, Nick Sirianni, as we know now, was absolutely crucial to those offensive game plans. And we really felt it whenever he was lost. So you can say, well, he doesn't call the plays in Cincinnati, but his handprints are all over that offense. And I think he would just be a fantastic option as well with his leadership. Obviously having the endorsement from Peyton Manning is going to be big for Jim Irsay to possibly get past that hurdle. We'll see how that goes. And then another guy is Raheem Morris would be a guy that I would look for. And, it's very rare to have somebody that's only 46 years old with 21 years of coaching experience in the NFL. And he's a guy that can come in. He's coached on both sides of the ball, on offense and on defense. He has experience in either one. And the coaching connections that he's made, I think out of all the candidates, he would be able to put together the best staff of position coaches, coordinators. You know, a lot of guys would come to work for that guy. And you can look at, you know, the jobs that he did previously. You know, he was, you know, the same age as me whenever he was coaching, you know, down in Tampa Bay the first time. And I mean, that's an impossible situation for a young guy to get into. Like, I couldn't imagine coaching an NFL team right now. That's insane to me. And he had some success there. They started 10 rookies, including a quarterback, and they went 10-6. And that was the last winning season Tampa Bay had before Tom Brady showed up. So give that guy his flowers. And I thought he did a really good job as the interim job in Atlanta as well. He took a team, I believe they were 0-7 or 0-5, and then he ended up going 4-7 with them. So they were winless before he took over as well, and he won 4 games. So contrary to popular belief among some people, interim coaches can have success, you know, and it can work. So yeah, those would be the 2 guys that I would have on my board, the ones that I would really look forward to getting into the building and possibly building this team around.
Sounds very good, very viable. We're going to probably get the same sentiment as we go around. Drake, we'll throw it over to you. You got a couple of names that you're like, man, I'd love to see learn a little bit more about this guy and possibly have him in to be the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
You know what? Everyone's been talking about Callahan, so I'll go just a different route. First off, I will say Raheem Morris would be perfect. He would bring in there's actually a couple pass game coordinators. One is Bobby Slowick, who has put Brock Purdy on the national spotlight. He also did it with Garoppolo. So I think he would be a great mentor for a quarterback. And he also has Zach Robinson, who helped Matt Stafford, you know, get to his Super Bowl winning ways. So I think that those are 2 names that kind of get overlooked that Morris would bring in. Probably Robinson just because he's from the Rams. But man, Mike Kafka, the fact that you took Daniel Jones and you turned him from a turnover machine into a very efficient quarterback who knew when to scramble. He knew when to get out of dodge. You did it setting up the running attack. Hello, Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, anybody. I mean, that is a perfect tandem to really brutalize defenses with. And your receiver core is more talented. Your tight end is more talented than what the Giants had. I think that you could really take Mike Kafka or Callahan, in all fairness, in different ways, though. But man, I really think that a guy like Levis would fit Kafka. A guy like Stroud would fit Kafka. So I'll take a different route and say Kafka and Morris are my 2.
Sounds good, man. Derek, what say you?
I'd say there's about 4, maybe even 5 guys that I'd be perfectly willing to have as the next head coach here. But I'd say that I think if your number 1 at this moment is not Brian Callahan, at least for Indianapolis's sake, then I don't know what you're doing. Obviously, you're bringing in a new quarterback, bring in the guy that over the last, 7 years has worked with Peyton Manning, Matt Stafford, and Joe Burrow. I mean, could only imagine that kind of work. And, you know, if you did happen to draft CJ Stroud, which we've been talking about a little bit, I think that the comp that everyone has with CJ Stroud is Joe Burrow. That's what they play a lot alike in some ways. So I think that would definitely be something. I think Brian Callahan would really does a great job of playing to the strengths of the quarterback, and also the way he designs the offenses, the way the Bengals are attacking defenses right now. They're playing up tempo. They're getting the ball out quickly, and they're still staying aggressive despite missing offensive linemen. So I love seeing that. And for me, for number 2, I mean, it's so hard to pick that because for me, it's like 2B, 2A, 2B, 2C at this point, you know, but I think I think Drake said it with Kafka as well. I mean, Kafka has been a guy that, you know, has worked with Patrick Mahomes. He's been around the quarterback room a lot. He understands how it is. You really want to try to find somebody that can mentor and develop your young quarterback that you're about to bring in. So I feel like that's a very important thing. Of course, you know, Steichen could probably do the same deal. I'm not 100% sure how he would handle it, but of course, Nick Sirianni is handing over the play calling abilities to him. And, you know, I'm with Cody as well. D'Amico Ryans is in there as well, not just because of his offensive mind, but because of, you know, the fact that he is a good mentor. He's an amped up guy. He brings the juice literally when it comes to this. So he is a guy that I could see every Sunday going in there. He is extremely prepared, so I feel like that would be great for them. But if I had to choose right now, it'd be Callahan and Kafka right now.
Yeah, Andrew, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, I'll give my top two real quick. At number two, I would say Shane Steichen, and I'll kind of piggyback off of what Drake said, talking about Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. Well, look at what Steichen has been able to do with that running game there in Philadelphia. I mean, you just watch on Saturday night, completely picking apart the Giants defense by running them into the ground, over 260 yards rushing for the Philadelphia Eagles, and doing it with guys that you don't think are the top running backs in the league. When you've got a workhorse like Jonathan Taylor being able to open up those holes, I mean, and then we haven't even talked about the fact about Shane Steichen working with Phillip Rivers, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and the development and work he's put in with those guys to help them reach their full potential and have great seasons with all of them. The way he tailors his offense to the strengths of each quarterback, I think that is something crucial that the Colts are going to have to keep an eye on. Yes, we talk about how Nick Sirianni doesn't think the best of the Colts organization right now because of what happened with Frank Reich, and that might play a role if Steichen takes the job or not, if he's offered it. But I think Steichen would be in a great position not only to help this entire team with the running game and the passing game, but to really help develop that young quarterback. And then number one, if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen what I've written recently on Horseshoe Huddle. If you watch the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, you know I am the biggest Brian Callahan fan there is. I have been screaming from the rooftops for this guy to get an opportunity. The guys have already mentioned the quarterbacks that he's worked with: Peyton Manning, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Joe Burrow. But what really sticks out to me is when you ask him why he got into coaching, he always talks about giving back to the players and being able to put the players in the best position to succeed. That's what he gets the joy out of. You hear when he got the interview request from the Colts, you heard guys like Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, guys just saying that this guy absolutely deserves it. Zach Taylor saying that he's going to be a great head coach someday. Peyton Manning back in 2015 saying he was going to be a great head coach someday. When you pair a young quarterback with Brian Callahan, the chances that those two are going to hit together, I feel like, are sky high. So if you're going to go with an offensive candidate, I think Brian Callahan is your guy for the Indianapolis Colts.
Absolutely, man. You guys all have some very, very good points. Steven, we're going to beat this drum probably as hard as anybody. We're going to jump on the Andrew Moore train, and with Callahan's our guy number one, no doubt about that. You got another guy or two that you're looking at and you're saying, I'm a little bit intrigued by this one coming through.
Well, so I want to say this with Callahan too. I've kind of had the fun little part of like tinfoil hat conspiracy. Who better to knock off to get Saturday to get Irsay not to think about Saturday than Peyton? And Peyton would come in and endorse Callahan immediately. And Irsay loves him some Peyton Manning. So I kind of think about that too. And then the other thing that I like about Callahan is if you listen to him speak, he will talk about the fact that, you know, his dad is renowned, one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the NFL. He's never worked with him, and he's never used his name to get a job, is what he's said. Like, he's never wanted that leg up, which I think that's amazing. I mean, he's right there for me. I'm a big Raheem Morris guy. Landon said it best. You know, he did well as an interim. He did well at Tampa, and it was a bit of a dumpster fire. And I was going to say that I got into an argument with someone talking about interim. It is okay for an interim to do okay. Look at Rich Bisaccia, someone we interviewed. That was far worse of a dumpster fire than the Colts were this year, and he took them to the playoffs. So, I mean, I always point that one out. And a name that I like, and Zach knows that I've said it because we've texted, we've talked, is actually a guy that got another interview. I like Ejiro Evero. I do. I think he is a really smart, young defensive mind. I think it gets lost when we talk about Raheem Morris being on both sides of the ball. Ejiro was as well. He was on the offensive side of the ball with Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco. I was really excited. I texted Zach when I actually saw that he picked up a second interview. He's a name that I see. I'm not going to say so secret because I think I've had him in my top 5, top 4 for most of the way. I like him. That's a name I think to kind of keep an eye on a little bit. Do I think he gets the job in the end? Probably not. I've told Zach, I feel like it's between two people. Like if you remove Saturday from the conversation, I think it's between two people.
Yeah, I mean, probably my second guy. Obviously, we know Callahan, but I like D'Amico Ryans. I love his energy. I just think that there's something to be said about a player who's played in those games, the respect level you have for a guy who's went out there and done the things that you're asking them to do. You've actually done that yourself. I'm not so sure that Ryans had what his level of interest is with the Indianapolis Colts. I know he's probably gonna have 2 or 3 teams vying for him when it comes down to it. But don't hate the Raheem Morris just because of the collection of staff that he could bring there. I think he probably would bring the strongest staff of anybody if you want to talk about noteworthy names. So that might be something to look out for as we go down the road. Guys, we've had a great time. You know, we did the roundtable about a week and a half ago. I thought let's get everybody back together and let's even include some people, you know. And we just thought that would be a really cool concept and fun idea. Got a great reaction from the fans saying, hey, love seeing all these different places from all these different places. Before Steven sends it out, if you guys haven't joined the No Horsing Around family, feel free to hit that subscribe button. We'll be providing you with content all off season long, as well as these guys. You can go check out Landon, Blue Stable, Drake and Andrew over the Horseshoe Huddle, Cody and Derek at Bring the Juice. Hit them with a subscribe, hit them with a like. Interact with them, man. These guys are great. Their DMs are open. They love talking ball all the time. So if you haven't already joined what they're doing, go out there and as soon as you get off this podcast, drink a beer and subscribe to every one of these channels. And it should be cool, man. Steven, finish us off, brother.
Yeah. So we always have to do this. Like I'll pop it up real quick. Like, you know, obviously we're powered by Wager Wire. Everybody knows that. You know, you can get in and out of the bets. You guys have heard us talk about all the time.
Money line this week. Just do it.
There you go. And you can do a parlay. The coolest thing we talk about all the time, my favorite thing is that you could do the parlay and you can actually get out of it. So if you bet on both games, you hit on one, go ahead and jump out if you think you're going to bust the other one. So I'm going to run this all the way through. Like Zach said, it's amazing having everybody on here. And I think we always end these things by saying, like, I love you and Zach loves you. But I'm going to kind of run, I know Derek does and Cody does and Landon and Drake and Andrew. Like, everybody loves everybody. We love that you guys joined us on here. Like Zach said, make sure you go over and check out each one of them. I told Drake, I was listening to his on my way home today. I've listened to Derek and Cody for years. You know, I've jumped on, I listened to Landon. And follow Landon also. I'm going to shoot this out. Follow him on Twitter. He does amazing breakdowns, you guys. It's amazing to kind of get that. But we're gonna finish this up. We all love you. We're out. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Peace.